In this video, I want to talk about one of the commonly debated topics, which is, can we alter or improve the state of our IT band? So let's go. Thanks for checking out this channel. My name's John. I'm the head therapist here at John W Sports Injury, where we want to be doing three simple things. We want to help you to understand your body so you can get rid of pain and weakness and strive forward to hit your health and well-being goals. So in this video, we're going to be discussing the IT band. Now, first of all, let's talk about what the IT band is. It's quite infamous around the endurance community. So if you're a long distance runner, cyclist, those types of sports where we're doing long repetitive motions, then you might well be familiar with this ITB. And as I say, it's infamous because it can be quite problematic. But first of all, we need to establish exactly what it is, and then I'm going to talk about whether we can actually change the state of it and improve things, or if we're stuck with ITB problems, is that just something that we're stuck with? So what the structure is it's a thick band of something called fascia. Now, fascia is the outer layer of our muscle. We have fascia all over our body, outside every single muscle. I often describe a muscle as thinking of like an onion, where we have the bulk of the onion being the muscle. Then we have the skin of the onion being obviously our skin, and then we have that plastic layer in between the onion and the skin, and that's actually how I think of fascia. So we have this connective tissue running all throughout our body, but we also have very thick bands of this fascia, and probably none more famous than the ITB. Another one you might be aware of is the plantar fascia, which again can become problematic. So we have this thick band of fascia running down the outside of our leg, but the important point that we need to think about, perhaps change our mindset a little bit, is that this is connecting our hip to our knee, and I'll come back to that as we talk through the video. Because what you may have seen or heard or be able to find is videos about how you can't change your ITB, how you can't stretch it, how you can't roll it. Now, I'm going to agree and disagree with these statements all at the same time, and let me explain why. Well, can we change the structure of the ITB? What I think has been now proven, and there's lots of research that goes on to this, is that actually we can't necessarily change the structure of the ITB. It's a band of fascia, which means it has different properties to muscle, which ultimately means that it's very difficult to stretch it or to actually change the structure of the ITB, so to make it more flexible or things. So that's why we hear lots of people saying, don't roll your ITB, don't stretch your ITB, it's a waste of time. But I think they're missing a key point here. The key point being is that what we can do is change the structures that are acting on that thick band of fascia, changing the structures that are acting on that ITB. So remember I said at the start of the video that this is connecting our hip to our knee. So a lot of the time we get the problems in the knee if we're suffering of ITB, or down the outside of the leg, but most of the issues or the causes are actually happening at the hip. So that's why I think ultimately, yes, we can improve what's going on at our ITB. So if you're someone who suffers with ITB friction syndrome, is this just something that you have to put up with? We often term this condition runner's knee. No, we definitely want to get about working on those things to ultimately improve the ITB. So what can we be doing? Well, firstly, I've said we can't stretch the ITB. That's true, but what we can do is stretch the structures that could be acting upon the ITB. So these essentially can be around the gluteal areas, the hip flexor areas, the quads and the hamstrings can all have an involvement upon that ITB. So how do we do this? Well, firstly, I would kick off with some glute stretching. So the nice thing about this glute stretch as well is that we can really start to move the position of the knee. By moving that position of the knee, you'll really find that sweet spot and the gluteal area that might be causing you the biggest problems. We can also look to work on our hip flexors, and in particular an area called your TFL muscle. This is one of the hip flexors that lives on the outside of the hip. But with this stretch, what we're looking to do is really get the leg underneath the body and take our hands away and off to the side. Here you see that we'll be acting into that TFL area, and then we can easily come out of that stretch and go into a standard hip flexor stretch as well, all from the same position in order to be releasing that hip flexor area. We can also be stretching out our quad muscles. I always like to do this lying on our front, bringing our foot towards the bottom, because what that allows us to do is not to cheat and keep our hips nice and flat on the floor. However, if you find that to be difficult or problematic, which it can be, it's quite a difficult stretch because we're not cheating, you can modify the stretch by laying on your side, because then you can allow your hips to tip forwards a little bit, making that stretch a little bit easier. Then finally, we can also stretch out our hamstrings. This is done by either being on one knee, stretching forward. So I like this one because we can easily do it from the hip flexor position and go straight into a hamstring stretch. We can also manipulate the toe position into 3 different positions, making sure that we're stretching out each of the 3 hamstring muscles that we have individually to get a really good stretch. But in the case of the ITB, most importantly, we'd be stretching out the outside hamstring, or what we might term the lateral hamstring. That's because this is the one that can be most directly affecting that ITB structure. So this is the one where you're getting your toe pointed inwards to really catch that good stretch. So whilst we're not necessarily stretching the ITB here, and so you might have heard this theory or seen these videos about not stretching your ITB, what we are doing is stretching the structures that are impacting upon the ITB. What we can also be doing is looking to roll out those surrounding structures. So these are where some of my favourite tools come in, like a foam roller, for example, a massage stick, a massage gun, ruin the next one here, a massage stick. All these things can work really nicely. So if we take any of these structures and we look to actually roll into those surrounding structures, and something like a ball can work really nicely, placing a ball underneath, just grab a ball, placing a dense ball. I've got a tennis ball here, but you know, normally if you follow my content, I like to use something like a lacrosse ball, placing that underneath the hip, sitting onto the ball and rolling out to the side. So you start facing forwards and then look to roll yourself off to the side. And here you'll be finding those spots, those sore points that will be acting upon those ITB. So definitely I would encourage you, if you have any of these tools, to be using those to work around that hip area and down the leg. So whilst we're not necessarily affecting the ITB, what we are doing is affecting the things that are acting upon it. So the final thing that you can definitely look to be doing to improving things around that ITB situation is strengthening those areas that act upon it. So looking to improve the recruitment, the strength around some of those gluteal muscles in particular, the muscles that are directly acting upon that ITB. So you can start this off with some non-weight bearing exercises. So exercises like the clam exercise can be really helpful, or an exercise like sideline hip abductions, where you're lying on your side and just bringing your leg away from your body and then slowly lowering it down towards the body. There's lots of exercises that you can do where what we're looking to do is really target those outside gluteal muscles, so that when we go into exercises like running or cycling that have more of an endurance element, the muscles have the strength in order to sustain that. And then once you find those to be comfortable, you can move on to some more weight bearing, specific to endurance sport exercises. So I particularly like an exercise that I call a heel drops off of a step, where what we're looking to do is slowly lower down one side with our toes pointing up and touch the heel onto the floor, and then bring that hip back to level. And so it's the leg, the side that's on the step or the support, that is actually doing the work, as it drives that other hip up. Because what we tend to find is when we're in these endurance sports and we lift our leg through the swing phase of gait, it's those muscles that should be stabilizing the leg that's in contact with the ground that become problematic. They fatigue and then they start to become tight or develop dysfunction, and that is the thing that's acting on the ITB. So hopefully you get the concept of this video that I've been trying to help with, which, yes, I hear lots of mixed opinions around this ITB structure, but what we know is that it can be hugely problematic. So what we don't want to do is not do anything to affect it. But when people say, well, you can't affect your ITB, okay, I think that's one point, but what we're really looking at there is a really sort of closed-minded view, and I don't think that's how we treat injury. Yes, the ITB is the thing that might be acting upon the knee. Can we change the structure of that? Potentially not, but what we can be doing is affecting the things that are acting upon it, to be putting less force through the ITB, so that ultimately that can settle down where you've got your pain and symptoms. Has that been helpful for you? If it has and you've made it this far in the video, why not hit that like button down below to show me that this is the type of content that you want to be seeing, and also it's going to show others how they can be helping that ITB. And if you haven't subscribed yet, why not hit that subscribe button down below, hit the bell notification, because then we'll be able to update you as soon as our next video drops. And speaking of next videos, here's another video diving into a little bit more detail about the ITB that you can go and check out right now.